Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Troy Bacon. Thank you for tuning in again. And this is the second episode of Cosmic Coexistence, a series I'm working on to document my personal contact experiences with extraterrestrial beings and how that got started, what happened, who they are, what I've learned, and a lot more. So, welcome, friends, Earth citizens, and fringe dwellers. In the last episode, I introduced how my contact journey really got started, with some visions and messages, telepathic messages of a ship or ships that were going to be arriving here in August of 2018. This was just over 2 years ago that all of this transpired, or really throughout 2018 it unfolded, and a lot more has happened. But now I would like to continue that story. So I kind of left off. I was at the ESETI Ranch. Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence is what that stands for. I woke up, I believe it was I think Saturday morning. That weekend I was there. I woke up in the morning with an image of an upside down black triangle in my mind, which I showed in the last video. I sketched that, and it wouldn't go away for quite some time. At least not in my mind. It was just there as I was waking up, but not really any context of what it was. And so then that day, later that day, I relocated from ESETI, which is just south of Mount Adams itself in south central Washington. ESETI is 14 miles south of Mount Adams, and we relocated to a place called Takhlakh Lake, still about the same distance away from Mount Adams, about 13 to 14 miles away as I understand, but a little further northwest of Mount Adams. And so it took, I think, another hour or two just to drive there, even though it's not really very far away, but it's a lot of roads and turns and such. We drove there. I was with the UFOI team, some of us on the team who went on that outing. And the first night we were there, it was kind of rainy, so it wasn't good weather for a sky watch. But the second night was quite decent weather, very clear. It got pretty cold at night, especially up near a mountain. And so we went out on a sky watch with Ambition Pictures, Dan Weiss and his son, who were there with us, and the other members of the UFOI team, about 6 or 8 of us. And we went to the day use area down by the lake itself, lakeside, and we had a perfect view of Mount Adams. I will show that in the video. It was just on the other side of the lake from us, or it seemed to be. The tall reflection of Mount Adams was perfectly mirrored in the lake, with the bright planet Mars shining up to the right of it. And so that was just a perfect setting to start the sky watch. We didn't see anything in the sky, really, on that outing. But what did happen is that we seemed to be hearing a lot of noises in the woods. I'll remind you, these are very thick, dense woods in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest near Mount Adams. And a lot of the trees have very thick coats of lichen on them. And it's, unless there's a trail, it can be tricky to navigate those woods if you're not experienced with forest survival and navigation. And where these sounds were coming from when we were at the Skywatch definitely did not have campers at it or near it. It was not near a campsite. It was, as far as we knew, it was just thick, raw, dense woods. And so, shortly after we set up and got there and started watching the sky, I was the farthest, sort of toward the left of the rest of the group, and of course, I was sitting in a camping chair, and just about 15 feet to my left was the beginning of the tree line and bushes and shrubbery and the forest. And I think I heard the noises more clearly than the others because I was closer. It was like something within 30 or 40 feet of us, making noises. And these noises sounded like someone or something banging a rock, a decent sized rock, against a tree, or also breaking sticks, not just little twigs, but actual branches and sticks. Um, some of these got quite loud. It was just sort of a continuous thing. We would hear these noises throughout a couple hours we were there. Some of them were louder than others, and some of them seemed to also correspond with our conversations and things we were saying, as if it was aware of us and aware of what we were saying, and in some way responding. While this was happening, I was also sending or trying to send telepathic messages toward it, just saying that we are a peaceful group and we won't harm it. We don't mean any harm. We were just watching the night sky. And then after a couple of hours or so, around midnight, we went back up the hill to our campsite, and a couple people went to bed pretty quickly, and then there were about 6 of us from the UFOI team and Ambition Pictures who stayed up around a campfire for about an hour or two. There were 6 of us, and then 3 of them peeled off and went to bed at different times. And then there were, of course, 3 of us left. Myself, a lady named Ray, who was on the UFOI team at the time, and a lady named Samara, who was with us on that trip. And so for a few hours, we were just sitting around talking about various subjects and things, and also what we'd been seeing and some of our experiences. And so Ray was on my right, Samara was on my left around the campfire. At one point, Samara and I just happened to look up from the fire at the right moment, and this was just a few days after a full moon, so the moon was beaming bright light through the branches and gaps between the trees, so it was illuminating the forest floor. And we looked up and saw this bit of movement in front of us. And it was something tall, apparently bipedal, and it just moved between one tree to the other in a gap. It didn't like keep going, it just was between one tree and the other. And I saw, especially the shadow of this thing, just for a brief partial second, blot out the beam of moonlight on the floor. So it was something kind of tall and large. We're not exactly sure how tall, but we estimated around between 8 to 10 feet tall, based on where it appeared to be from our point of view. And also, it was silent. This thing moved quickly. There were definitely sticks and debris on the ground, and it was completely silent. And so then it didn't really move more. We didn't see more motion the rest of the night we were there. Except I was watching that spot, and I feel like I might have seen little like a head or something peeking out from behind a tree or something, but not entirely sure. Anyway, we all peeled off from the campfire right around 2:45 in the morning. Looked at the, the clock on my phone, and it was just about 2:45 when we left the campfire. I went back to my tent, which was not far away, and um, got ready for bed. Yeah, at one point I had to get up and go use the toilet one last time, and it was like an outhouse sort of thing at one of these state parks. Just across the road, it was a paved road, so it was maybe 40 or 50 feet away. I walked across the road there to the outhouse and came back. What I noticed on the way back, especially, was that the forest was completely silent, dead silent, uncanny, absolutely no noise, no lights. It was as if nothing and no one else was around me, which was kind of ominous on its own. I'd never been in that sort of silence in a forest before, because I hadn't really been out on my own like that before. But I found it kind of peaceful. I I was nervous a little bit, but I was also sure that there was no dangerous animals in the area. So I also felt safe, and I didn't even need a flashlight. It was so bright from the moonlight that I could just see everything around me and walk across the road. I went back to my tent. After I got back in my tent, I heard someone trying to start a car in our campsite, uh, pretty close. And I didn't know who that was or why they were trying to start a car at that time at around 3 in the morning. And so at first they tried to start the car and it sounded like it didn't work. And a minute or two later they tried to start it again and it did work. And then the engine was just running for a little bit and then it shut off. I didn't know what that was. I didn't really care because it didn't seem to be an issue. And so shortly after I laid my head down to go to sleep, I started hearing noises really close to my tent, and it was not the person who was in the car. Um, they weren't just, they didn't open and close the door. They didn't, I didn't hear them walking around, coming and going. But these noises just happened to suddenly start. It sounded like footstep noises, heavy footstep noises, within about, I would estimate, 10 to 15 feet away from my tent at the most. Um, it sounded like just repeated, like one foot after the other, digging your feet into the ground, but something heavier than a normal human. And I knew what the footsteps of my people on the UFOI team at the time sounded like, so their footsteps were a lot quieter, even in the woods. But these were really heavy footsteps. And I listened to this for a bit. I was a little bit nervous. I'd been told about what Sasquatches might be like and um, what they can do, but also told that they won't harm humans. They almost never have historically. Um, so I felt safe because I knew it wouldn't harm me. I felt that it was a Sasquatch or something because I knew one had been following us and watching us throughout the night. And these noises went on for probably half an hour or more. I was just laying there looking up to see if I could see any lights or shadows moving around, projecting on my tent, see if anybody was walking around. And of course, nobody was. It was fairly just no light, except when I was looking up, while these footstep noises were continuing, um, kind of like dancing, I think. To me, it sounded like dancing. Maybe a Sasquatch dancing in the moonlight. And so I started seeing these little specks of colorful light above me under the roof of my tent, but just little specks of light blinking in and out, kind of like the size of a pinhead or smaller. Just I hadn't seen anything like that or had an experience quite like that. I don't know exactly what that was, possibly a projection of some sort from the Sasquatch, um, but it felt comforting. It was not. It was not like an attack, or it wasn't controlling. It was just comforting. At one point, I just knew I needed to sleep, so I did try to sleep. It took me some time to get to sleep, but then I did, and the next morning I woke up, and everything just seemed normal. People were walking around. Some of the other people I was with were already up and about and eating and talking, and so I woke up and joined them, and as we were having sort of a morning convening time, Dan Weiss, the director of Ambition Pictures, happened to mention to us that he was camping in his car with his son throughout the night, and in the middle of the night, at one point, he tried to start his car to turn the heater on, and then the engine wouldn't start. But what he saw was that the computer monitor, it was only a 2-year-old Nissan at the time, the computer monitor would light up, but the clock and the other information on it was just all blank or zeros where there should have been words and numbers. Um, and so then the engine wouldn't start, and then he tried it again a minute or two later, and then the engine did start, and everything was working just fine as normal. That's not normal. I'll get into that. But basically, that was when the investigation started. And we started questioning Dan about this, and then everyone sort of tried to think or remember if they had strange experiences in the middle of the night. At the time, most of the focus was on Dan and his car, not so much me, but I thought that I'd slept normally. So what we did is we were investigating his car and the campsite, and at one point we got our magnetic compasses out, those who had compasses, and we stood in a triangle around the campsite trying to triangulate if there were magnetic disturbances in the area, and indeed our compasses would not point north. As we got closer and closer together, we figured out that it was Dan's car in the campsite that was somewhat of a magnetic disturbance, and as we would hold our compasses up to his car and around it, they would either, the needles would point in different directions, or they would even spin at certain places. And we knew that there could be magnets in the doors and the engine and such, but that was not it. At the end of the investigation that day, it was concluded that his car had been magnetized like a bar magnet, north at one end and south at the other, or positive at one end, negative at the other, and just like a magnet, two polarities. And so then we knew that something strange had happened. There were also multiple other battery failures. I had my iPhone with me and a GoPro camera. They were both at least 3/4 of the way charged. I turned them both off before I went to sleep. But then when I woke up, my iPhone would turn on, but the GoPro would not. It was completely dead. They both have lithium-ion batteries. They should have been working the same. And something had drained GoPro camera battery. Also, Kevin, a man who was with us at the time, he set up a game camera in the middle of the night to see if he could catch any movement of any sort. I believe it was posted to a tree, posted up somewhere near his tent camp area. And when he woke up, he said that the protective case had been opened and the camera itself had been opened and the battery was dislodged. Yet when he reviewed the footage, there was nothing, no movement caught on the camera. So whatever did that was obviously intelligent enough to be able to open the camera and dislodge the battery without moving in front of it. That is unusual for normal campers anyway, to tamper with a camera unless they were doing something. We think it was a Sasquatch, possibly even a juvenile that was doing that, playing with some of our batteries. But it may have been something else too, which will become more apparent. And we talked to the camp host, and she told us that there were also many other campers in the area at that campground that reported battery failures that same night. Anomalous battery failures, things just wouldn't work. And Michael, who was the leader of the UFI team at the time, he said he woke up in the middle of the night to relieve himself, and he was actually camping with Kevin, who brought like a big pop-up tent thing, and so he kind of had to wake up Kevin just to get out, and Michael had to sleep with a CPAP machine. His CPAP machine started making noises as if the battery was dying. He woke up, and Kevin said he would switch the battery to the other large battery cell that he brought. And so then Michael got out. He should have only been gone for a minute or two. Kevin asked him what time it is. Michael looked at his watch. It was one of those watches with the glow-in-the-dark dots around it, and he said it was 3:30 in the morning. He got out, came back, and then when he came back, Kevin asked him what time it is again, and Michael looked at his watch and he said 4:30. So somehow, within the time that Michael got out to use the bathroom and then come back, which only should have been a few minutes, an hour had been used up. But they can't explain that unless there was a missing time incident. And this was recorded on Michael's CPAP machine too, because it had a computer in it that monitors his sleep patterns and duration of sleep and such. So it recorded only an hour and 90 minutes, or somewhere around there, of sleep total for Michael that night. So somehow it recorded just a short bit of sleep, and then the rest of the night, somehow he was either gone or something was interfering with the computer. Now, when we got back from that trip, it was fairly apparent that we had some sort of contact with unusual or paranormal or cryptid beings, or they had contacted us. But when we got back, we reconvened when we had another meeting with the UFOI team, and the other group members showed up. Nikki Jacobs was on the team, and she's a psychic medium. She's very public about her abilities and her hits and things. And so when we were having a meeting, Michael was interviewing us on a Facebook Live broadcast, interviewing those of us who were on the trip and what we had seen and what we'd heard and things that happened. And so when I moved over to sit down in the chair in front of Michael across the table from him, um, Nikki was on my right near the camera, and I knew what her psychic responses were like to certain things, and when she got a certain what she calls hits, psychic hits about something, a lot of psychic information just hits her all at one time. And I knew that she had picked up on something as soon as I sat down in front of her. Then Michael interviewed me, and then after we turned off the camera after the interview, I talked to Nikki some, and she told us about a little about what she had seen. There's a lot more that she didn't tell us at the time that she picked up on, but basically what she said is that at least 6 of us went up. That was her words. She said we went up. She wasn't very specific about what happened at the time, but there was a lot more I have recalled in hypnosis since then. So it was at that moment that Nikki said we went up that it was irrefutably obvious to me that I had been involved in a mass contact or group contact experience, and I hadn't had that sort of confirmation before in this lifetime, but I'd heard about other people's contact and abduction experiences, so I kind of knew that it could happen and what it could be like. But then after that, I started to get in deeply into the um, delve deeply into what other people were saying about their contact experiences, and I went through some hypnosis experiences as well to recall some of what happened during the nights that we were near Mount Adams and the beings and what basically just what happened that was not obvious or that we were not aware of at the time. So I will get into a lot more of that, my hypnosis memories, hypnosis, uh, hypnosis memories, self-recalled, and with Mary Kennedy, our hypnotist, guided and such, and things I've recalled and learned, and what happened, what actually happened, and I'll lay that out more in the next video and videos to come, and why this happened, what this is all about, and a lot more. So please stay tuned. I will look forward to sharing the next segment of the story with you. I'm glad I was able to lay this out. It was a very complicated experience. A lot went down in the woods, and I hope that these videos may shed some light on what is going on this earth and may be able to help other contact experiencers, other alien experiencers who are just awakening to their contact and involvement. And thank you very much for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons and hit the notification bell. So much more to talk about. Thank you very much. Till next time.